The sun beat down on the dusty rodeo grounds of Stillwater, Oklahoma. Men in weathered jeans and wide-brimmed hats shuffled around the auction pens, their voices echoing under the metal-roofed arena. Among them, Caius Bennett stood stiffly, arms crossed, watching the auctioneer rattle off bids for a horse that never should have been up for sale. His jaw was tight, but he said nothing. He had promised his late brother he'd take care of things. And right now, things were falling apart. Across the corral, Esme Bennett, barely 4 years old, wandered quietly from her mother's side. No one noticed her at first, just a little girl in a red flowered dress, clutching a sun-faded ribbon in her tiny hand. She had heard her uncle and mom whispering about selling Marigold, the chestnut mare that had belonged to her father, Caliban Bennett. Esme didn't understand what auction meant, but she knew Marigold was all she had left of him. The mare stood tall, elegant even in the heat, with deep, watchful eyes. When Esme reached her, the horse lowered her head gently. The child placed a small hand on Marigold's nose, her bottom lip quivering. The connection between them was immediate and unshakable, the way it had always been since her father's funeral. The smell of hay and sweat filled the air, and all around them, the crowd buzzed with bids. 3,000. Who'll give me 35? The auctioneer shouted. Suddenly, Esme stepped into the ring. The crowd froze. A gasp rippled through the stands. Caius turned just in time to see his niece standing in front of Marigold, arms out like a shield. Her voice, though small, was clear. "You can't sell her. She's my daddy's horse. He loved her. He said she was part of our family." Her eyes searched for her mother, but no one came. A silence fell over the auction like a blanket. One bidder, an older man in a faded rodeo shirt, lowered his hand. "I ain't bidding against that," he muttered. Murmurs of agreement followed. Marigold's sale was quietly pulled. No official word was spoken, but the message was clear. Esme had spoken for her father, and the crowd had listened. Caius lifted Esme into his arms, holding her tightly. But deep down, his mind was elsewhere. Caliban's death had never sat right with him. And something about today, about the way Marigold reacted, about a man in the shadows watching everything, made him feel that the past wasn't done with them yet. That night, the wind rattled the old barn doors like a ghost trying to get in. Caius stood in the darkened kitchen, a cup of stale coffee in his hand, staring out the window toward the pasture. Marigold grazed quietly under the moonlight, her coat still shimmering as if Caliban had brushed her just yesterday. Upstairs, Esme had finally fallen asleep, curled up with her father's old denim shirt. But Caius couldn't rest. Not with that pit growing in his gut. Ever since the auction, something had been gnawing at him. It wasn't just the girl's outburst, though that had shaken him. It was the man in the crowd. The one with the leather vest and mirrored sunglasses, standing too still, watching too closely. Caius hadn't seen him around Stillwater before, and in a place like this, new faces didn't go unnoticed. What was worse, the guy had taken photos, of Esme, of Marigold, of the whole damn scene. Why? The memories came back in waves. Caliban had been fearless in the arena, riding bulls, breaking broncs, chasing prize money like it was the only thing that mattered. But toward the end, he'd changed. Quiet. Distant. He'd started locking the barn at night, making secret phone calls behind the shed. One morning, he didn't come home at all, until they found his body crushed beneath his own horse trailer. An accident, they'd said. But now, Caius wasn't so sure. That evening, Caius took a flashlight and headed to the barn. Dust hung thick in the air, and the smell of old leather and hay filled his nose. He passed Caliban's old tack trunk, untouched since the funeral, and finally knelt beside it. The lock was still broken, just like he remembered. Inside, beneath piles of roping gear, he found a weathered notebook. The kind Caliban used to scribble in when no one was watching. The first few pages were nonsense, feed schedules, vet appointments, but deeper in the book, Caius found something strange. A list of names. Some crossed out. Some with dollar amounts next to them. At the bottom of one page, scribbled in darker ink, "They're coming for her. Keep Marigold hidden." Esme doesn't know yet. Caius's heart stopped. Was his brother hiding something darker than gambling debts or rodeo injuries? He sat in the dirt floor of the barn, notebook in hand, as Marigold snorted softly behind him. The wind moaned through the cracks in the walls, like it knew something he didn't. Whatever Caliban had gotten into, it wasn't over. The morning sun rose heavy over Stillwater, painting long shadows across the Bennett ranch. Caius hadn't slept. The notebook hadn't left his side all night. His eyes burned, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something in those scribbled notes held the truth Caliban had taken to the grave. Still, he didn't dare show them to Clara, Esme's mother. She was barely holding things together as it was. And Esme, well, she had already lost too much. Esme was in the barn early, sitting beside Marigold, brushing her mane with her tiny fingers. The mare stood calmly, as if protecting the little girl from the weight of the world outside. Caius leaned against the doorway, watching them in silence. He wanted to believe the worst was over, that the auction had been the final hurdle. But Caliban's words kept echoing in his mind. "They're coming for her." Who were they? As he walked the fence line later that morning, Caius spotted something that made him stop cold. Fresh tire tracks, too wide for Clara's pickup, too deep for a simple delivery truck. They led down the service road behind the barn, straight toward the woods that bordered the property. He followed the trail, boots crunching on gravel, heart pounding harder with every step. At the edge of the tree line, something metallic glinted in the dirt. A single bullet casing. He crouched down, picked it up, and turned it over in his hand. It wasn't from any rifle they kept on the property. It was military grade, clean, sharp, and deliberate. This wasn't hunting. This was a message. Someone had been there, watching, maybe even listening. A shiver ran down his spine. He shoved the casing into his pocket and made his way back to the house, scanning the trees with every step. Back at the ranch, Clara sat on the porch, rocking slowly, her eyes red again. "She keeps asking when her daddy's coming home," she said without looking up. Caius didn't answer. Instead, he handed her the notebook. She flipped through the pages, growing paler by the second. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Caius shook his head. "I don't know. But whatever it is, Caliban didn't die by accident." From inside the barn, Esme called out suddenly, "Uncle Caius." Her voice was sharp, scared. He ran toward her, heart thudding. When he got there, she was pointing to the far end of the stall. Someone had carved something into the wooden beam. 4 letters, fresh and deep. C-A-L-I. Caliban's name. Only half finished. Someone had been there last night. That evening, the sky turned a deep orange, casting long shadows over the barnyard. Caius stood by the window, staring out over the land like a man waiting for something to arrive, or someone. His hand kept drifting to the bullet casing in his pocket. Nothing about this felt random anymore. The half-carved name in the stall, the tire tracks, the military round. This was personal. Caliban had known something. And someone was trying to make sure no one else found out. Down by the fence, Esme sat in the grass, braiding wildflowers into Marigold's mane. The mare stood patiently, eyes soft and body still, as if understanding the importance of every moment with the little girl. Esme had been quiet all day. Too quiet. When Caius finally walked over, she didn't look up. He crouched beside her. "You okay, sweetheart?" Esme nodded slowly, then whispered, "Uncle Caius, someone was here last night. I saw them from my window." His blood ran cold. She looked at him now, her expression serious beyond her years. He had a hat like Daddy's. But his face was wrong. He didn't walk like Daddy. He walked stiff, like a soldier. Her fingers fidgeted in her lap. I think he saw me too. Caius gently placed a hand on her back, torn between comforting her and panicking. A man sneaking around the property at night, watching the barn? Possibly armed? He glanced toward the house. Did you tell your mom? She shook her head. She was crying. I didn't want to make it worse. That night, after putting Esme to bed, Caius double-checked every lock on the house and barn. He even loaded the shotgun, something he hadn't done in years. Stillwater wasn't the kind of place where people locked doors. But now everything felt different. Threatened. Fragile. Later, as the crickets chirped outside, Caius returned to Caliban's notebook. One of the names caught his eye. K. Briggs, 2008, $15,000. He didn't recognize the name, but he remembered the year. That was the season Caliban had stopped competing for a few months without telling anyone why. It didn't make sense. Why was Caliban keeping track of payments and names? And what kind of payments reached 15 grand? In the silence, a sharp thud came from the porch. Caius grabbed the shotgun and rushed outside, but the yard was empty. Only the sound of wind through the trees. Then he saw it, something hanging on the porch rail. A single horseshoe, rusted and old, wrapped in a piece of Caliban's torn flannel shirt. Caius couldn't sleep. The rusted horseshoe sat on the kitchen table like a curse, its jagged metal edges stained with something darker than rust. Maybe old blood, maybe just time. But the worst part was the strip of flannel tied around it. He recognized the fabric. It was from the shirt Caliban had been wearing the day he died. And nobody had seen that shirt since the accident. Until now. He stared at it under the dim kitchen light, tracing the torn fabric with his fingertips. There was no note, no threat, but the message was clear. We know what you're digging into. And we're watching. Caius's hand clenched into a fist. Whatever had started with Caliban hadn't ended with him, and now Esme was in the middle of it. By morning, Caius made a decision. He drove into Stillwater and paid a visit to an old friend, Sheriff Emmett Daws, a retired officer who now ran the local feed store but still had connections in law enforcement. Emmett had known Caliban since they were boys. When Caius showed him the notebook, the sheriff's weathered face turned pale. "You don't know what you're messing with, son," he muttered. Caius leaned forward. "Then tell me, who the hell is K. Briggs?" Emmett hesitated, then walked to the back office. He returned with a dusty manila folder and tossed it onto the table. Briggs was ex-military. Special ops. Came back home and started working security contracts, black market, off-books type work. He used to scout rodeos for young men down on their luck. Guys like your brother. He paused. People said he was recruiting. Others said he was blackmailing. Caius felt the floor shift beneath him. "Are you saying Caliban was working for this guy?" "I'm saying your brother got into something he couldn't walk away from," Emmett said, voice heavy with regret. "And I'm guessing when he tried to cut ties, they made sure he paid the price." Caius drove home in silence, the notebook on the passenger seat, heart pounding with rage and dread. He didn't know how deep this ran, but now he understood one thing. Caliban had been trying to protect Marigold and Esme from something bigger than just debt. He had left clues, tried to send warnings, and now it was up to Caius to finish what his brother had started. Back at the ranch, Esme was waiting on the porch, clutching a drawing in her hands. "I drew Daddy," she said softly, handing it to him. The picture showed Caliban standing beside Marigold, and a shadowy man in the background with no face at all. The wind picked up that evening, dry and sharp, stirring up clouds of dust across the ranch. Caius paced the porch, the notebook pressed against his side like a weapon. His mind replayed the sheriff's words over and over. Blackmail. Recruitment. Special ops. The picture Esme had drawn haunted him, not just because of the faceless man, but because of how calm her father looked standing beside him. Had Caliban once trusted this Briggs? Had he willingly stepped into something he couldn't escape? Inside, Esme sat cross-legged on the living room floor, playing with a carved wooden horse Caliban had whittled for her before he died. Clara, her mother, watched from the window, arms folded, her eyes locked on the barn. "Something's wrong," she said quietly. "I feel it in my bones." Caius nodded. They all did. The land, the animals, even the silence, felt different now. Charged. That night, around 2 a.m., Marigold began to panic. Her whinnies shattered the stillness, wild and high-pitched. Caius bolted from bed, shotgun in hand, and sprinted to the barn. The mare was stomping hard, eyes wide and white-rimmed, staring at the far end of the pasture like something was there. Something she recognized. And feared. He stepped outside, scanning the tree line with a flashlight. Then he saw it. A flicker of orange. Small, but unmistakable. Fire. Caius ran toward it, heart racing. As he approached, he saw the flames dancing along the edge of the grass, a controlled burn, or maybe a warning. It hadn't spread far yet, but someone had definitely lit it deliberately. Just enough to scare the livestock. Just enough to send a message. At the center of the small fire circle was something half buried in the dirt, a blackened military dog tag. Caius knelt down and picked it up with a gloved hand. The name was still visible. K. Briggs. Back at the house, Clara was comforting Esme, who had woken from a nightmare at the exact same time the fire started. "He was calling for me," she said through tears. "Daddy was yelling. He said, 'Don't let him take her.'" Caius stood in the doorway, chest tight. Esme didn't know about Briggs. She had never heard that name. Yet somehow she had felt it, like her father was still watching, still fighting to protect them. As the wind died down and the last embers cooled in the dirt, Caius knew one thing for certain. Briggs wasn't done. He was just getting started. The next morning, the air was heavy with smoke and silence. Caius sat at the kitchen table, the burned dog tag on a napkin in front of him, spinning slowly under his finger. Clara stood by the sink, holding a mug she hadn't sipped from in an hour. No one spoke. The only sound came from outside, where Esme was humming quietly while brushing Marigold's mane like nothing had happened. But everything had. Caius finally broke the silence. "We need to leave the ranch." Clara turned to him, eyes wide. "Leave? This is our home. Esme's home." "It's not safe anymore," he said, voice low but steady. "Someone set that fire. Someone left that horseshoe. Briggs is playing with us. I don't know what he wants, but I know he's circling closer." Caius paused. "We can go to Emmett's cabin up near Black Hollow Ridge. No one knows about it. It'll give us time to think, regroup." Just then, the landline rang. They all froze. Caius answered, the old receiver cold against his ear. The voice on the other end was calm, almost friendly. "You found the tag," the man said. "That's good. Means you're paying attention." "Who is this?" Caius growled. "You know who I am," the voice replied. "And you know what I want. The horse. That animal knows more than you think. Caliban tried to hide her, tried to bury the truth. But some things don't stay buried, Caius. Some things live." Before Caius could speak again, the line went dead. He slammed the phone down, breathing hard. "He wants Marigold." Clara stared at him, confused and afraid. "Why? She's just a horse." "No," Caius said, shaking his head slowly. "Not just. She was with Caliban the whole time. If he used her to move things, hide things, documents, recordings, hell, maybe even proof of whatever Briggs was doing, then she's not just a witness. She's evidence. Outside, Esme hugged Marigold's neck, whispering something into her ear. The mare twitched but remained still, calm in a way no other creature could be, as if she knew she was being trusted with something important. Caius watched them, a chill crawling up his spine. If Briggs was willing to burn fields and stalk children, what else would he do? The game had changed. Now it wasn't just about protecting a memory. It was about surviving the truth. The old cabin at Black Hollow Ridge was nothing but logs, dust, and silence. It hadn't been lived in for over a decade, but it was isolated, surrounded by thick woods and forgotten roads, exactly what Caius needed. As night fell over the ridge, he boarded the windows and double-checked the locks. Clara paced the living room, her nerves unraveling with each creak in the floor. Esme, though, remained strangely calm. She sat on the wooden floor beside Marigold, who they had brought in through the back barn. Esme rested her head against the mare's chest and closed her eyes. "She's trying to tell me something," she whispered. Caius overheard her and paused. "Tell you what, sweetheart?" "I don't know yet," Esme replied, her voice soft. "But Daddy said I should listen to her. He said she remembers everything." Caius exchanged a worried look with Clara, then moved to inspect the horse's saddle, a rugged, hand-tooled piece that had belonged to Caliban. He hadn't paid much attention to it before, but now he ran his fingers along every seam and strap. One side felt thicker than the other. He unstitched it carefully and found something wedged deep inside the leather lining, a flash drive wrapped in wax paper and sealed with electrical tape. Clara gasped. "What is that?" Caius held it up, heart pounding. "Proof. It has to be." He powered up his old laptop with a portable battery and inserted the drive. After a moment, a single folder appeared, Blackline Ops, 2008 to 2011. Inside were dozens of documents, scans of contracts, payment logs, and even grainy footage of armed operations in foreign countries. At the center of all of it, Briggs. His face. His voice. His orders. Clara covered her mouth. Caliban. He was trying to expose them. "No wonder they killed him," Caius muttered. Suddenly, the sound of an engine echoed faintly through the valley. Caius's blood ran cold. He rushed to the window and peered through a crack in the boarded frame. Headlights. 2 sets. Coming up the hill. He found us. Esme stood up slowly, her hand still on Marigold's neck. "We're not alone," she said. "What do you mean?" Clara asked. Esme turned to her. "Daddy's here. He said not to be afraid. He said Marigold knows the way out." Caius didn't have time to ask what that meant. He grabbed the drive, slung the saddle over his shoulder, and looked at Marigold. It was time to run. And this time, the horse would lead them. Caius tightened the saddle across Marigold's back, the flash drive secured deep inside. Clara held Esme close, whispering prayers between shaking breaths. Outside the cabin, the roar of engines drew nearer. Headlights flickered through the trees like hunting eyes, sweeping across the clearing. There was no more time for planning, only instinct and movement. "We ride through the dry creek bed," Caius said. "It's overgrown, they won't follow fast. Marigold knows the way." Esme didn't hesitate. She climbed into the saddle like she had done it 100 times, her small arms wrapping around the horn as Marigold snorted, alert and ready. The mare shifted her weight, muscles coiled like springs. She knew this was no ordinary ride. The first gunshot cracked through the air like a whip. Caius grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her toward the trees as Marigold bolted ahead, hooves pounding against the packed earth. Esme held on tightly, her hair flying behind her like a banner of defiance. Behind them, 2 shadowy figures broke through the brush, armed, fast, and closing in. Caius fired a warning shot into the air. "Back off!" he shouted into the darkness. But the men didn't slow. Another shot rang out, closer this time. A tree limb exploded just inches from Clara's head. They reached the edge of the creek bed, and Marigold leapt down the incline like she'd done it in another lifetime. Caius and Clara scrambled after, sliding on roots and loose soil. The canopy thickened overhead, swallowing them in shadows. Then came the voice, deep, steady, and unmistakable. "Give me the drive, Bennett. No one else has to get hurt. Briggs." He stepped into view near the top of the ridge, dressed in black, his weapon lowered but ready. "You think that file changes anything? You think the world cares about men like me?" Caius raised his own weapon, breathing hard. "Maybe not. But she'll know. My niece. She'll grow up knowing the truth about her father. And she'll know he died protecting her." Briggs smirked. "Your brother made a mistake trusting you." Before Caius could answer, a blur of motion came from the side. Marigold, bursting through the trees with Esme still clinging tight. The mare reared back, hooves striking the ground as if protecting her rider from the monster ahead. Briggs hesitated for a split second, just long enough. Caius fired. The shot echoed through the valley, followed by the thud of a body hitting the leaves. But there was no time to celebrate. More engines were coming, and Esme was crying. "We're not safe yet," Clara whispered. And they weren't. But the ending had already begun. Dawn broke over Black Hollow Ridge with a hush, as if even the trees were holding their breath. Smoke from the night's chaos still lingered in the air, curling above the forest like fading memories. Caius stood beside Clara on the ridge, both of them bruised and exhausted, staring down at the valley where Briggs had fallen. His body had been taken by the others, silent men with covered plates and unmarked trucks. No words, no threats, just retreat. They had what mattered, the flash drive. And now it was in safe hands. Sheriff Emmett Daws, armed with connections from his time in law enforcement, had driven through the night to meet them at a ranger station near the edge of the ridge. When Caius handed him the drive, Emmett didn't say much, just nodded slowly and promised, "This time they'll answer for it." But for Esme, it wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about understanding. Back at the ranch, a week later, she stood in the pasture beside Marigold, both healing in their own quiet ways. The mare bore a small scar on her flank, where a bullet had grazed her during the escape. But she walked strong, proud, as if she knew her purpose had been fulfilled. Esme leaned her cheek against Marigold's neck, eyes closed, her voice barely a whisper. "Daddy says thank you." Caius watched her from the porch, hands in his pockets, heart heavy but full. He knew life would never be the same. The shadows would always linger. But they had survived. More than that, Esme had found strength. Clara had found clarity. And he had finally understood what his brother had died trying to do. Protect what mattered. In the weeks that followed, the documents from the drive made headlines across the country. A congressional inquiry was launched. Names were named. Deals were exposed. And though Briggs had disappeared from the official reports, the truth had cracked the surface, and that was enough. Stillwater came back to life slowly. The Bennetts rebuilt the barn, repainted the porch, and reopened the pastures. People in town nodded differently now when they passed Caius. Not with pity, but with respect. One evening, as the sun dipped below the fields, Esme climbed into Marigold's saddle and rode slowly along the fence line, the same route her father had once taken every day. And for the first time since his death, the wind carried peace. A legacy had been preserved. And a little girl had saved more than a horse. She had saved the truth.